The sun was setting behind the wide green field of the exclusive Royal Golf Club, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. From a distance, it looked like a peaceful evening, the kind where families gather and laughter floats in the air. But behind the quiet beauty of the scene, a storm was about to break, one that would shatter lives and leave scars that no time could erase. Anna Tran, 28, a gentle kindergarten teacher who was 7 months pregnant, had been dragged to the golf course by her husband, David Nguyen. She had never liked these places filled with arrogance and money, but David insisted. He wanted to show off in front of his wealthy friends, to parade his status like a trophy. For Anna, it was exhausting, but she endured. She always endured. For her baby, she told herself, she could survive anything. But tonight was different. Tonight she had finally dared to confront him. A message had flashed on his phone earlier, a message she was never meant to see. It was from Emily, her childhood friend, her sister in every way but blood. The words burned into Anna's eyes. "Can't wait to see you after the game, love." In that moment, the fragile illusion of her marriage collapsed. Her best friend, her husband. Betrayal cut deeper than any wound. Standing on the perfectly trimmed grass, Anna's voice trembled as she whispered, "Why, David? Why, Emily?" Her hands shook as she clutched her belly. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't accusing him in front of the crowd. She was simply pleading, a broken woman begging for truth. David's face darkened instantly. His friends shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension. But David had no shame left to lose. "Shut your mouth," he hissed, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can embarrass me here? You worthless woman." His words were like knives, cruel and sharp. Before anyone could react, David grabbed his golf club with a grip so tight his knuckles turned white. Anna stepped back, her heart pounding against her ribs. Fear clawed at her throat, but she couldn't run, not with the weight of her unborn child pressing on her body. She could only stand frozen as David lifted the club high above his head. Time slowed. Gasps erupted from the people around them. Someone shouted, "Stop." But it was too late. The club came down with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through Anna's body, tearing a scream from her lips. She stumbled, clutching her belly, blood soaking through her dress as she collapsed onto the grass. The crowd panicked, voices rising, footsteps scattering. The perfect golf course became a nightmare. Anna's vision blurred as the world spun. She felt the warm life inside her slipping away, her baby's heartbeat fading into silence. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "My child, please stay with me." But her voice was already fading, her strength pouring out onto the ground. Her last sight before darkness claimed her was David's cold eyes, full of rage, not remorse. And then, footsteps thundered across the field. 2 towering figures broke through the chaos, their faces twisted with fury and fear. William, Richard, her brothers. Billionaires in power, but right now, just 2 men watching their sister bleed. And in that instant, everything was about to change. The world around the Royal Golf Club erupted in chaos. People screamed, some froze in horror, others fumbled with their phones to call for help. Yet for Anna, the sounds were muffled, fading into the distance like echoes in a tunnel. All she could feel was the searing pain tearing through her body and the unbearable heaviness in her womb. She knew something was terribly wrong. Her brothers, William and Richard Tran, reached her side within seconds. William, the older one, fell to his knees, his trembling hands cradling her head. "Anna, stay with me. Please, stay with me," he pleaded, his voice cracking with desperation. Richard pulled off his jacket and pressed it against the blood soaking through her dress, his heart hammering against his chest. He had faced ruthless boardroom battles, billion-dollar deals, but nothing had ever terrified him like this moment. "Call an ambulance, now!" Richard roared at the crowd. Several people rushed to obey, but time felt endless, every second slipping away like sand through an hourglass. Anna's lips quivered as she whispered, "The baby? I can't feel. My baby." Her words stabbed into William's heart like a dagger. He bit his lip, fighting tears. He wanted to tell her everything would be okay, but the truth weighed heavily in his gut. Meanwhile, David stood frozen a few feet away, the bloody golf club still clutched in his hands, his face twisted, not in regret, but in panic. He glanced around, searching for an escape. Some of his wealthy friends stepped back, unwilling to defend him. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. "You monster!" William roared, his voice thundering across the field. "You don't deserve to breathe the same air as her." Before David could move, police sirens wailed in the distance. The flashing red and blue lights cut across the fading sunset. Within moments, officers rushed onto the green, guns drawn, shouting orders. David dropped the club, his arrogance collapsing as fear finally pierced his mask. "Hands behind your back! You're under arrest for assault and attempted murder," one officer barked. David's face went pale as cold steel handcuffs clicked around his wrists. But for William and Richard, there was no satisfaction in seeing their sister's abuser restrained. Their focus was only on Anna, her breaths growing shallow, her eyelids fluttering like a candle in the wind. The ambulance arrived, and paramedics swarmed in, lifting Anna carefully onto a stretcher. William held her hand tightly as they rushed her toward the vehicle. "Anna, don't let go. We're here. Your brothers are here. You're not alone." At the hospital, sterile white lights flickered above as Anna was wheeled into the emergency room. William and Richard stood outside, helpless, their fists clenched, praying silently. Hours passed like years until a doctor finally stepped out, his face grave. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "We did everything we could. We saved Anna's life, but the baby didn't make it." The words shattered them. Richard slammed his fist into the wall, his knuckles bleeding. William covered his face, tears spilling unchecked. Inside the room, Anna lay pale and still, her hand resting on her empty belly. When she opened her eyes, the truth hit her harder than any blow. Her child was gone forever. Her body shook with sobs that no one could quiet. And yet, through the heartbreak, one thought consumed William and Richard, burning in their chests like fire. David Gwynne would pay, no matter what it cost. Long before the ambulance ride, before the golf course and the flashing sirens, Anna Tran believed in love. She was just 23 when she met David Gwynne at a charity gala hosted by her university. She had been volunteering, serving drinks and guiding guests to their seats. David, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, carried himself with the confidence of a man who owned the room. He was charming, witty, and generous, or at least he knew how to play the part. He noticed Anna immediately, captivated by her gentle smile and the innocence in her eyes. For a girl who had grown up modestly, far away from the glittering world of wealth, his attention felt like a fairy tale. Within weeks, he swept her off her feet with roses, expensive dinners, and promises of forever. He whispered that she was his light, his angel, the only one who truly understood him. Anna's heart, naive and pure, clung to those words. She believed she had found her prince. Her brothers, William and Richard, had their doubts from the beginning. They were protective, cautious men who had learned to spot deception in the business world. But Anna begged them to give David a chance. "He loves me," she said. "He's not like anyone else." Against their instincts, they stepped back, trusting her judgment. The wedding was extravagant, a spectacle filled with champagne and laughter. Anna walked down the aisle glowing, her white dress flowing like a dream. David's eyes sparkled as he vowed eternal love before family and friends. That night, Anna whispered to herself, "I'm the luckiest woman in the world." But the dream cracked quickly. At first, it was subtle. He criticized her cooking, her clothes, the way she spoke. He would brush it off with a laugh, calling it just advice, but Anna felt the sting each time. Soon the laughter turned into cold silence, and the silence turned into anger. The first slap came on a rainy night after Anna asked about his late hours. David exploded, calling her ungrateful. He apologized afterward, swore it would never happen again, showered her with gifts. Anna forgave him, believing the man she loved was still there. But the cycle repeated. The bruises grew harder to hide, the excuses more desperate. "I tripped," she told her coworkers. "I'm just clumsy." She couldn't bear the thought of shame, of admitting her perfect marriage was a lie. The final betrayal came quietly. Anna noticed him pulling away, his phone always locked, his smile reserved for someone else. When she discovered the truth, that his mistress was Emily, her childhood best friend, the pain was unbearable. Emily, the girl who had shared secrets, laughter, and dreams, was now sharing Anna's husband. Anna's world collapsed, yet she remained silent. She told herself she could endure for the sake of her unborn child. She believed once the baby was born, things might change. David might soften, Emily might disappear. Hope was the only thing keeping her alive. But standing in that hospital bed, empty and broken, Anna finally realized hope had been her prison all along. And for William and Richard, hope was over. It was time for war. David Nguyen was not the man he pretended to be. To the outside world, he was a successful entrepreneur with charisma and wealth. He knew how to smile for the cameras, shake hands at business meetings, and charm investors into believing he was trustworthy. But behind closed doors, his empire was built on sand. The truth was uglier than anyone dared to imagine. David's fortune came less from smart investments and more from reckless gambling and shady deals. High-stakes poker tables, underground betting clubs, and secret loans from dangerous men had left him drowning in debt. Every win made him feel invincible. Every loss pushed him deeper into desperation. Anna never knew about the hidden accounts or the threats whispered over late-night phone calls. She only saw the stress in his eyes, the way he came home reeking of alcohol, the anger that boiled over at the smallest question. When she asked where the money was going, he snapped, "You wouldn't understand. Just be quiet and play your part." But gambling wasn't his only sin. David's hunger for power and pleasure led him down darker paths. Emily, Anna's childhood friend, wasn't the first affair. She was just the most personal betrayal. Before her, there were others, models, co-workers, strangers from dimly lit clubs. David's infidelity was an open secret among his circle of friends, yet Anna was always the last to know. What shocked William and Richard once they began digging was how deep the lies ran. With their vast resources, they hired private investigators, hackers, and lawyers to uncover every hidden detail. What they found made their blood boil. David had been funneling money from Anna's personal accounts, stealing from the very woman who trusted him most. He had even forged her signature on documents to cover his tracks. Worse, he bragged to his friends that marrying Anna wasn't about love. It was about access. Access to her family name, her brother's influence, and the wealth he hoped to leech from them. The cruelest discovery came from a recording taken at a private party. David, drunk and careless, laughed with his buddies. "Anna's too stupid to realize she's just a baby machine. That's all she's good for. And when I'm done, Emily will replace her. At least Emily knows how to satisfy me." When William heard those words, his hands shook with rage. Richard nearly shattered the glass table in front of him. The betrayal wasn't just against Anna, it was against their entire family. David had mocked them, used them, and hurt the person they loved most. For Anna, learning the truth was a dagger to the heart. The man she once believed was her prince had not only destroyed her life but also plotted it from the beginning. She lay in her hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how she could have been so blind. The baby she had carried, the sacrifices she had made, they were all trampled under David's selfishness. But while Anna wept, her brothers planned. They were not men who forgave easily. They had built billion-dollar empires by crushing opponents far stronger than David Nguyen. And now, with the fury of family burning inside them, they were ready to destroy him. The question was not if David would fall, but how far he would be dragged down before the end. Anna Tran was the kind of woman who smiled even when her heart was breaking. For years, she hid the truth behind makeup, scarves, and polite laughter. To her neighbors, she was a devoted wife. To her co-workers, she was the sweet teacher who loved children. To the world, she seemed happy. But behind the closed doors of her marriage, silence became her shield, and endurance her only weapon. The abuse began slowly, almost invisibly. A raised voice. A slammed door. A grip on her wrist, just a little too tight. Anna told herself it wasn't serious, that David was stressed from work, that he didn't mean it. But soon the bruises darkened, the insults sharpened, and the apologies grew emptier. There were nights when she sat on the bathroom floor, pressing a cold towel against her cheek, staring at her reflection through swollen eyes. "It's my fault," she whispered to herself, repeating the lie David had drilled into her. "If I were better, he wouldn't be like this." Her brothers noticed her avoiding their calls, canceling family dinners, inventing excuses for why she couldn't visit. They worried, but Anna always reassured them. "I'm fine. Really. Don't worry about me." She was terrified of what David would do if they intervened. He had warned her many times, his voice low and venomous. "If you ever tell anyone, I'll make you regret it." When Anna found out she was pregnant, a spark of hope lit her heart. She believed the baby might change everything. David might soften, become the man she once loved. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to dream of a happy family. She painted the nursery, bought tiny clothes, and placed her hand over her belly each night, whispering promises of a better future to her child. But David didn't change. If anything, he grew worse. He mocked her body as it changed, sneered at her cravings, and raged whenever she showed the slightest vulnerability. To him, her pregnancy wasn't a miracle. It was an inconvenience. Still, Anna endured. She smiled at her students during the day, swallowed her tears at night, and clung to the belief that her sacrifice would protect her child. The bruises faded, but the fear never did. Every time David raised his voice, she flinched. Every time he touched his golf clubs, her stomach twisted in dread. Her only source of comfort came from small, stolen moments of peace. Rocking gently in the nursery chair, writing letters to her unborn baby that she never intended anyone else to see. In those letters, she poured out her heart. One day she wrote, "We'll be free. One day, it will just be you and me, safe and happy." But fate was cruel. That day never came. Instead, it was stolen from her in one violent swing on the golf course, the very moment she dared to confront him. Now, lying in her hospital bed, Anna clutched the last letter she had written, her tears soaking the paper. The dream of freedom with her baby was gone forever. Yet as her brothers stood outside her room, their faces carved with determination, Anna realized something she had never dared to believe before. She wasn't alone anymore. And for David, that truth would be the beginning of his downfall. The months leading up to the tragedy at the golf course were filled with tension so thick it felt like poison in the air. Anna walked on eggshells every day, never knowing which version of David would come home. The smooth talker with fake charm, or the monster with a temper as sharp as broken glass. At 7 months pregnant, she should have been resting, preparing for the arrival of her child. Instead, she found herself bending over backwards to avoid his wrath. If his dinner wasn't warm enough, he yelled. If the house wasn't spotless, he cursed. If she dared to question his late nights, the punishment came quickly and without mercy. The night that nearly broke her forever began with a simple question. David had stumbled in past midnight, smelling of whiskey and perfume. Anna, exhausted and heavy with child, asked quietly, "Where were you?" His eyes narrowed. In seconds, his hand was around her throat, pressing her against the wall. "Don't you dare question me," he hissed. Anna gasped for air, clutching her swollen belly with trembling hands. For a terrifying moment, she thought he might end both her life and her baby's right there. Then, as suddenly as it began, he released her. She crumpled to the floor, coughing, tears streaming down her face. David looked down at her with disgust. "You're pathetic," he spat, before storming out of the house. Anna spent the rest of the night rocking back and forth, her hands wrapped protectively around her stomach. She whispered to her baby, begging forgiveness for failing to keep them safe. That was when she made a promise to herself. If she survived this pregnancy, she would leave him. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she could no longer live in chains. The next day, she reached out secretly to Emily, the one person she thought she could trust. She texted, "I'm scared. I think I need help." Emily replied within seconds, her words warm and reassuring. "Don't worry, Anna. I'm here for you. I'll take care of everything." What Anna didn't know was that Emily was lying in David's bed when she sent that message. Every word of comfort was a dagger sharpened with betrayal. Instead of protecting Anna, Emily passed along her fears to David, feeding his rage, fueling his control. That betrayal set the stage for the confrontation at the golf course. When David invited Anna to join him that evening, she thought maybe it was a peace offering. Maybe he was finally willing to show her some respect in public. She dressed carefully, even forced a small smile, convincing herself it was a step toward reconciliation. But David had no intention of peace. He wanted control. He wanted to remind her who held the power. On that green field, surrounded by polished men and women who whispered behind champagne glasses, Anna's fragile hope shattered once more. She confronted him about Emily, her voice trembling but determined. It was the bravest thing she had ever done. And for that courage, David raised his golf club. The swing that followed would not just take her baby. It would ignite a war her brothers were more than ready to fight. The waiting room of the hospital was silent except for the ticking of a clock and the occasional shuffle of nurses. William and Richard sat side by side, their expensive suits wrinkled, their faces drawn with exhaustion. Both men had built empires from nothing, William in finance, Richard in real estate, but nothing had prepared them for the sight of their sister lying broken in a hospital bed. When the doctor delivered the news that Anna's baby hadn't survived, something inside both brothers cracked. Richard punched the wall until his knuckles split, blood dripping down his hand. William, the older and usually calmer one, sank into a chair, burying his face in his palms. For a long time, neither spoke. Finally, William lifted his head, his eyes red but burning with fury. This isn't just about Anna anymore. He killed her child. He tried to kill her. David Nguyen doesn't get to walk away from this. Richard nodded, his jaw tight. He thinks he's powerful because he waves around money and lies. But he has no idea who he's dealing with. We'll make him regret every bruise, every insult, every tear he's caused Anna. They both knew they couldn't bring the baby back. Nothing could erase the pain etched into their sister's heart. But they could deliver justice, and for men like William and Richard Tran, justice was never gentle, it was absolute. That night, in a private corner of the hospital, the brothers laid out their plan. They would use every resource, every connection, every ounce of their influence to expose David for what he truly was. A fraud, an abuser, a liar. No matter how long it took, they would destroy him piece by piece. Richard, ever the strategist, pulled out his phone and began making calls. We'll dig into his finances. If he's been hiding debts or committing fraud, we'll find it. William added, and his affairs. We'll track every woman, every scandal, every dirty secret. The world will see who he really is. But beneath the anger, there was another emotion. Guilt. William clenched his fists. We should have seen this sooner. We should have protected her. She begged us to trust him, and we let her. That won't happen again. Never again. Richard put a hand on his brother's shoulder. We can't change the past, but we can change what happens next. Anna isn't alone anymore. When they returned to Anna's room, she was awake, her eyes swollen from crying. She looked at them with a mixture of shame and despair. I should have left him sooner, she whispered. William knelt by her side. No, Anna, don't you dare blame yourself. He's the monster, not you. From now on, you don't have to fight alone. We'll carry this for you. Richard added softly, we promise, Anna, he will pay. We'll take everything from him, the way he took everything from you. Anna closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of safety. Her brothers were here. They wouldn't let David hurt her again. And somewhere across town, David sat smug in a holding cell, believing he could buy his way out, unaware that 2 billionaires had just declared war against him. By the next morning, the story had exploded across every television screen and news feed in the city. Headlines screamed, businessman arrested for assaulting pregnant wife at exclusive golf club. Photos of David in handcuffs flooded the internet, his once polished image shattered in a single night. Reporters swarmed outside the hospital, desperate for a glimpse of Anna or her powerful brothers. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, voices shouting over one another. Is it true she lost the baby? Will the Tran family press charges? Did David Nguyen have a mistress? The Tran family spokesperson issued a brief statement. Our priority is Anna's health. We will pursue justice with every legal avenue available. It was calm, controlled, and professional, exactly what the media expected from 2 billionaires. But beneath the polished words lay a storm of fury waiting to break. Inside the hospital, Anna watched the coverage from her bed, her heart aching. Every headline, every photo was another reminder of her humiliation, her loss. She turned her face away from the screen, whispering, I never wanted this. I never wanted my pain to be a spectacle. William sat beside her, his hand gently resting on hers. I know, Anna, but sometimes the world has to see the truth to believe it. He hid behind his charm for too long. Now everyone sees him for who he really is. Richard entered the room holding his phone. It's worse than we thought, he said grimly. David's lawyer is already spinning the story. He's claiming David acted in self-defense, that Anna attacked him first. Anna's eyes widened in disbelief. He's blaming me? Her voice cracked, the injustice slicing through her chest. Richard nodded. He's desperate. His only chance is to paint you as unstable, and he's got Emily backing him up. The name hit Anna like a slap. Emily. Her childhood friend, her confidant, the woman she had trusted with every secret. The betrayal still cut deep, and now it threatened to destroy what little strength she had left. She's giving interviews, Richard continued, his tone bitter. She's saying David confided in her, that you've been emotional, unpredictable. She's playing the role of the loyal friend while stabbing you in the back. Anna covered her face with her hands, her body trembling. Why? Why would she do this to me? William's voice hardened. Because she was never your friend. She was his mistress, and now she's his shield. But don't worry, we'll expose her too. Outside, the media frenzy grew louder. Talk shows debated Anna's character, gossip columns dissected her marriage, and paparazzi camped outside the hospital day and night. David's friends whispered about betrayal, his business partners cut ties, and his empire began to crumble. But David, sitting in his holding cell, smirked. He still believed he could twist the narrative, buy the right people, and walk free. He had done it before, and he thought he could do it again. What he didn't know was that William and Richard had already moved the game onto their battlefield. They weren't just fighting for Anna. They were orchestrating a public reckoning. And soon, a piece of evidence would surface that no lawyer, no mistress, and no lie could ever explain away. For Anna, the hospital room had become both a sanctuary and a prison. She was safe from David's rage, but not from the headlines that seemed to scream her humiliation back at her. She avoided the TV whenever possible, but she couldn't escape the whispers of nurses, the endless buzzing of her phone, or the pitying glances from visitors. The betrayal that haunted her most wasn't David's violence, it was Emily. The woman who once braided her hair before school dances. The girl she used to stay up late with, whispering secrets under the covers. The friend she had trusted more than anyone. Now that same woman stood in front of cameras, her perfectly rehearsed words dripping with venom disguised as concern. Anna has been under a lot of stress, Emily said in an interview. David confided in me many times. He was scared for his safety. I think people are rushing to judge him without knowing the whole story. To the public, Emily appeared calm, supportive, almost saintly. To Anna, it was a knife twisting deeper with every sentence. Richard was the first to bring her the undeniable proof. He sat at Anna's bedside, his expression tight. "You need to see this," he said, holding out his phone. On the screen was a series of photographs. David and Emily together, arms entwined, lips pressed in secret kisses outside a luxury hotel. Anna's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the images, each one more damning than the last. The final photo showed David resting his hand on Emily's waist in the same way he used to hold Anna, back when she still believed his lies. Tears blurred her vision. "She was supposed to be my sister," Anna whispered, her voice breaking. "How could she do this?" William stood by the window, his jaw clenched. "Because she wanted what you had, the house, the money, the attention. David promised her the life you lived. She wasn't your friend, Anna. She was waiting for her chance to take everything from you." Anna pressed a hand against her chest, struggling to breathe through the ache. It wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation on the deepest level. Everything she had confided in Emily, every fear, every tear, had been used against her. The news hit the internet within hours. The photos leaked, plastered across gossip sites and social media. Public opinion turned like a tide. Emily was no longer the devoted friend. She was the mistress who had stood by while Anna was beaten and broken. Crowds gathered outside her apartment, chanting her name with scorn. Former friends cut ties. The same reporters who once praised her loyalty now called her a snake. Emily tried to defend herself, but her carefully built mask was crumbling. Still, David clung to her as his last lifeline. In a desperate phone call from jail, he told her, "Don't abandon me. If you stay loyal, we can beat this together." But loyalty built on lies is fragile. Emily's world was collapsing, and her fear grew with every headline, every angry message, every threat whispered at her door. And when the brothers revealed the next piece of evidence, even Emily would realize there was no way out. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and faint flowers from the bouquet a nurse had left at Anna's bedside. She sat upright, her face pale but her eyes no longer empty. The grief was still there, heavy and sharp, but something new was beginning to stir, a quiet strength. And it was that strength that carried her when she finally said, "Bring her here." Her brothers exchanged uneasy glances. William frowned. "Anna, you don't need to see her. She doesn't deserve a second of your time." But Anna's voice was steady. "I need to. Not for her. For me." Reluctantly, Richard made the call. An hour later, Emily walked into the room. She wore sunglasses, her hair pulled back, her lips trembling as reporters snapped photos of her entering the hospital. Her once perfect image had cracked under the weight of scandal, but when she stepped inside Anna's room, her tone was as rehearsed as ever. "Anna," she began softly, pulling off her glasses. "I came because I wanted to explain." "Explain?" Anna's voice sliced through the air. "Explain how you betrayed me? How you stood beside the man who destroyed my child? My life?" Emily flinched but tried to hold her ground. "I never wanted to hurt you. David, he needed me. You don't understand, Anna. He said you were unstable, that you were losing control. I thought—" "Stop." Anna's eyes blazed, and for the first time in years, Emily saw the strength beneath her friend's gentle nature. "Don't you dare twist this into my fault. You knew who he was. You saw the bruises. And still, you chose him." The silence in the room was suffocating. William stood with his arms crossed, his glare burning into Emily. Richard leaned against the wall, fists clenched, restraining himself from throwing her out. Emily's composure cracked. "I loved him," she confessed, her voice trembling. "I thought he would leave you, that we could have a future together. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Anna's laugh was hollow, broken. "You didn't mean for it to go this far? Emily, I lost my baby because of him, and because you gave him the confidence to keep hurting me. You weren't just his mistress, you were his accomplice." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "Please, Anna, believe me. I'm not the enemy here. The media has twisted everything." Anna's hand shot up, silencing her. "No, the world is finally seeing you for what you are. You betrayed me in the deepest way possible. You weren't just my friend, you were my sister, and you chose him over me." For the first time, Emily had no reply. Her lips quivered, her tears spilled, but no excuses came. The weight of her betrayal filled the room, suffocating and undeniable. Anna leaned back against her pillows, her voice steady but final. "Get out. I never want to see you again." Emily stood frozen for a moment before turning toward the door. Her footsteps echoed down the hallway, each one sounding like the end of a lifetime of friendship. But as the door shut behind her, William's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. "Anna?" he said slowly. "You need to hear this. They just uncovered something even worse about David." William's face was pale as he lowered his phone, the glow of the screen reflecting in his eyes. Anna sat upright, her heart racing. "What is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. He exchanged a look with Richard before answering. "It's not just about the abuse. David's not only a violent man, he's a criminal. And the evidence is coming out." Richard took the phone and handed it to Anna. On the screen were documents, bank statements, wire transfers, and emails. They revealed a tangled web of offshore accounts, fake companies, and illegal gambling debts that stretched across 3 countries. Millions of dollars had moved in and out, and much of it traced back to money stolen from Anna herself. Her chest tightened as she scrolled. "He took my savings?" Her voice cracked. "The account I opened for the baby's future, he emptied it." Richard's jaw clenched. Not just emptied, he used it as collateral for loans from people you don't want to know about. Dangerous men. If he hadn't been arrested for what he did to you, they might have come after him. And you. Anna's stomach turned. The betrayal went deeper than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just her body, her trust, or her marriage that David had violated. It was her very future. William leaned forward, his tone cold and precise. "The investigators found he forged your signature. He transferred funds in your name. Legally, that makes you responsible if we don't clear this. But don't worry, we'll handle it. We'll bury him with his own lies." Anna pressed her hand against her chest, trying to steady her breathing. "How could I have been so blind?" William's eyes softened for a moment. "Don't blame yourself. Men like him survive on deception. They trick good people into believing they're something they're not. He fooled you, but he can't fool us anymore." Richard paced the room, his voice growing harder. "We'll make sure the entire world sees this. the abuse, the infidelity, the fraud. He won't just lose his freedom. He'll lose every shred of respect, every dollar, every ally. Anna's tears streamed silently. She wasn't crying out of weakness this time. It was grief mixed with rage, grief that her baby's future had been gambled away, rage that she had been treated like nothing more than a pawn in David's schemes. "I want him exposed," she whispered. "Not just for me, for every woman he's ever hurt, for every person he's ever cheated. I want him stripped bare." William nodded. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." The brothers immediately began working with their network. Lawyers prepared new charges, investigators traced every hidden asset, reporters hungry for scandal were fed pieces of the truth, and soon, news outlets ran with headlines like wildfire. David Nguyen tied to multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. David, sitting in his cell, slammed his fists against the wall as he watched the news. His face burned with rage. "No," he muttered. "This isn't over. I still have people. I still have ways out." And then he smirked, his eyes narrowing. He picked up the phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. On the other end, Emily's voice answered, and with it, a dangerous new alliance began to form. The jailhouse phone crackled with static as David pressed the receiver to his ear. His face was pale under the harsh fluorescent lights, but his eyes gleamed with a predator's cunning. On the other end, Emily's shaky voice whispered, "David? Is it really you?" "It's me," he said, his tone low and urgent. "Listen, I don't have much time. They're trying to bury me, Emily. Your so-called best friend and her billionaire brothers, they think they've won. But we're not finished, not by a long shot." Emily leaned against her apartment wall, blinds drawn, the sound of reporters shouting outside her window faint in the background. She was already drowning in hate mail, her reputation shredded. She had nothing left, no friends, no family willing to stand by her. The only person who still reached out was David, the very man she had tied her fate to. "David, the media is destroying me," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. "They call me a snake, a homewrecker. I can't even walk outside. And now the photos. Everyone knows." "Let them talk," David snapped. "They don't matter. What matters is survival. You and me, we're all we've got left. If you stay with me, we can fight this. I'll get out. I'll take back everything they stole from us." Emily's hands shook as she clutched the phone. Deep down, she knew David's promises were empty, just as they had always been. But she was trapped. She had burned every bridge for him. To abandon him now would mean facing the world alone. And the thought of being utterly alone terrified her more than anything. "What do you want me to do?" she asked finally. A slow smile curved across David's lips. "We attack first. They think they can ruin me with evidence? Fine. We'll give them a scandal of their own. You'll go on camera, crying, saying Anna made everything up. Say her brothers are using their wealth to smear me. We'll paint her as unstable, jealous, and vengeful. We'll make her the villain." Emily hesitated. "But Anna? She lost her baby. Everyone knows that." David's voice hardened. "Then we use it against her. Say she's blaming me because she can't face the truth. People love drama, Emily. They'll believe what makes the best story. And with the right money, the right people, stories can change." Emily closed her eyes, shame burning her cheeks. But the desperation in David's tone pulled her back in. She had chosen her side long ago, and now she was too far gone to turn back. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." "Good girl," David murmured. "Stand by me, and when this is over, it'll be you and me. No more secrets." But what neither of them knew was that William had already anticipated this. The brothers had ears everywhere, lawyers, reporters, even guards inside the jail. Every word David spoke on that phone call was being recorded, logged, and prepared as evidence. Emily thought she was saving herself. David thought he was outsmarting billionaires. But the Trans were already 3 steps ahead, and the trap was about to spring. The Tran brothers were not ordinary men. They had built their fortunes on strategy, foresight, and the ability to crush opponents who underestimated them. And David Nguyen, arrogant and reckless, had made the mistake of treating them like amateurs. 2 days after David's phone call with Emily, William sat in his penthouse office, a wall of glass overlooking the city. On his desk lay a neatly labeled folder. Inside were transcripts of every word David had spoken, every manipulative phrase, every venomous promise. The jailhouse recording system had captured it all. Richard paced the room, his fists clenched. He wants to paint Anna as unstable? He wants to turn her suffering into a weapon? Then let's see how the world reacts when they hear his voice plotting against her. William's lips curved into a cold smile. Exactly. We don't just fight back, we let him destroy himself. The brothers called a trusted journalist, a woman known for exposing corruption. Within hours, the audio clip was in her possession. By dawn the next morning, it was everywhere. The recording played on every news channel, every social media platform. David's voice, dripping with malice, echoed through living rooms and offices. Say she's blaming me because she can't face the truth. People love drama, Emily. They'll believe what makes the best story. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Hashtags like Justice for Anna and David Exposed trended worldwide. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse with signs reading, "Protect women, punish abusers," and "No mercy for David." Emily's reputation, already hanging by a thread, collapsed completely. Clips of her tearful interviews were replayed alongside David's cold instructions, proving she had been nothing more than his puppet. Strangers shouted at her on the street, throwing insults and drinks. Once, she had been admired. Now, she was despised. Anna watched the coverage from her hospital bed, her hands trembling as she heard David's words. The pain was sharp, but for the first time, she felt vindicated. The world finally knew the truth. She wasn't unstable. She wasn't a liar. She was a survivor, and David's mask had been ripped away. Richard stood beside her, his voice steady. "This is just the beginning, Anna. We'll make sure he never hurts anyone again." Meanwhile, in his jail cell, David erupted in fury. He threw a chair across the room, screaming at the guards, demanding to know who had leaked the call. But no tantrum could undo what had already spread like wildfire. His lawyers panicked, scrambling to contain the damage, but the evidence was undeniable. Still, David refused to give up. "I'll get out of here," he growled to himself. "Money talks. People can be bought. The trans think they've won, but they don't know what I'm capable of." And as if fate was mocking him, the guards slipped a letter through the bars. The envelope bore a name David hadn't seen in years. A powerful figure from his gambling days, someone dangerous, someone who never forgave debts. When David tore open the letter, the words inside made his blood run cold. His enemies weren't just the trans anymore. Someone far darker was closing in. David Nguyen sat on the edge of his narrow jail cot, the letter trembling in his hands. The words were written in sharp block letters, each one cutting deeper than the next. "Your debt is past due. We warned you. The world may believe you're facing trial for assault, but we know the truth. You owe us, David. And now, you will pay, in blood or in money. Choose wisely." Signed only with the name Victor. David's face went pale. Victor was no ordinary lender. He was a notorious figure in the underground gambling world, a man whispered about in backroom poker circles. Ruthless, violent, and merciless, Victor was known for collecting debts in ways that made headlines with bodies attached. David had borrowed heavily from Victor years ago, certain he could win big and pay it all back. Instead, his losses grew, and his arrogance pushed him deeper into the pit. He thought he could charm his way out, stall for time, or bluff until he hit a miracle. But Victor wasn't a man who tolerated excuses. Now, sitting behind bars, David realized he was trapped on all sides. The trans were destroying him publicly. Victor was threatening to destroy him privately. And the only ally he had left was Emily, whose own world was collapsing. When Emily visited the jail later that week, David shoved the letter at her. "Read this," he snapped. Her hands shook as she scanned the page. "David, this is dangerous. What are we going to do?" "We?" His eyes narrowed. "There's no we, Emily. You're either with me or against me. I need money, fast. You'll get it." Her mouth fell open. "Me? I've already lost everything. My accounts are frozen, my reputation is ruined. What do you expect me to do?" David leaned closer, his voice venomous. "Figure it out. Sell what's left. Borrow. Beg. I don't care how. If Victor doesn't get paid, it won't just be me he comes after. Do you understand? They'll come for you too." Emily's stomach twisted with dread. She wanted to scream at him, tell him she had sacrificed everything already, but his glare silenced her. For years she had clung to him out of love, then out of fear, and now she realized it was pure survival. She was trapped, just like him. Meanwhile, across town, William and Richard were briefed by their investigators. They had uncovered Victor's name in David's financial records. Richard slammed his fist onto the table. So not only is he a cheater and a liar, he's tied to one of the most dangerous men alive. This is bigger than we thought. William leaned back, thinking carefully. Good. Then we won't have to lift a finger. Victor will crush him faster than any court could. All we need to do is protect Anna and watch the pieces fall. But Anna, overhearing, shook her head weakly. No, I don't want blood on my hands. I just want justice. I don't want anyone killed because of me. William placed a hand on her shoulder. Justice takes many forms, Anna. Sometimes men like David bring their own punishment upon themselves. And miles away, Victor's men were already preparing their next move. Because Victor didn't just want repayment. He wanted to make an example. And David Nguyen was about to learn what true fear felt like. The days after Anna's surgery blurred together in a haze of pain and silence. She barely spoke, barely ate. Nurses came and went, checking her vitals, offering soft encouragement, but Anna felt hollow, as if her soul had been carved out and left on that golf course with her child. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw David's face twisted in rage, the swing of the club, the scream that had torn from her throat. And always, beneath it all, the crushing emptiness of knowing her baby was gone. At first Anna thought she would never recover. But grief has a way of reshaping itself. Slowly, in the still hours of the night, she realized that if she let despair consume her, David would win. He had already taken her child. She would not let him take what remained of her spirit. One morning, when the sunlight streamed through the hospital window, Anna asked the nurse for a mirror. Her hands shook as she held it. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were swollen, her skin pale, her lips cracked. But behind the brokenness, there was something else. Something stronger. William entered the room just then, pausing when he saw her holding the mirror. "You're beautiful, Anna," he said softly. She lowered the mirror, tears in her eyes. "No, I'm not. Not yet. But I will be." It was the first time in weeks her brothers had seen a spark of fight in her voice. Richard stepped forward, his usually stern face softening. "That's the Anna we know. The one who never stays down." The brothers surrounded her with support. They arranged for therapists, nutritionists, even private yoga sessions to help her heal. At first, Anna resisted. She didn't want to be fussed over. But little by little, she allowed herself to lean on them. Each session, each conversation became a brick in the foundation of her recovery. She started journaling, writing down her pain, her anger, her hopes. On the pages, she confronted everything she had buried for years, the nights of abuse, the betrayal of Emily, the shame she had carried like a chain. And with every word, she felt the weight lift, piece by piece. Weeks later, Anna took her first walk outside the hospital. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of flowers from a nearby garden. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, letting the fresh breeze wash over her. For the first time since the tragedy, she felt alive. Not whole yet, but alive. Richard walked beside her, steadying her arm. "You don't have to rush," he said. "I'm not rushing," Anna replied, her eyes fixed ahead. "I'm moving forward." Her strength grew with each passing day. She began to smile again, not the polite, hollow smile she had worn for years, but a genuine one, born of resilience. But even as she rebuilt herself, Anna knew the storm wasn't over. David was still scheming in his cell. Emily was still desperate, and the shadows of Victor loomed ever closer. And one evening, as Anna closed her journal and prepared to rest, a nurse entered with a cautious expression. "Miss Tran," she said softly, "there's someone asking to see you. Someone from your past." Anna looked up from her hospital bed, her heart tightening at the nurse's words. Someone from her past? She wasn't sure she had the strength to face anyone outside her family yet. But curiosity pushed through her hesitation. "Who is it?" she asked softly. The nurse hesitated. "He said his name is Daniel Lee. He claims he knew you in college." The name struck Anna like a jolt. Daniel. Memories flickered. Late nights studying in the library, laughing over instant noodles in the dorm kitchen, the gentle way he had always encouraged her dreams. Daniel had been her closest friend back then, maybe even something more, before life pulled them in different directions. Anna's throat tightened. "Send him in." Moments later, the door opened and a tall man stepped inside. Daniel looked older, more mature, but his kind eyes hadn't changed. He wore a doctor's coat, his hospital badge clipped neatly to his chest. "Anna," he said quietly, almost as if he was afraid the sound of her name might break her. It's been a long time. Tears welled in her eyes. Daniel, I didn't know you were back, he offered a small smile. I've been working abroad for years, but when I heard about what happened, I couldn't stay away. Her heart ached at his words. No judgment, no pity, just concern. He pulled a chair beside her bed, his presence steady, grounding. I'm so sorry for everything you've been through, he said gently. You didn't deserve any of it. Anna lowered her gaze. I feel like I should have seen the signs. I should have left sooner. Maybe then my baby. Her voice broke, tears spilling down her cheeks. Daniel reached forward, his hand hovering for a moment before lightly resting over hers. No, Anna. Don't blame yourself. Abusers are masters at hiding their true selves. You loved him, and he betrayed that love. That's on him, not you. For a moment, Anna allowed herself to lean into the comfort of his words. It had been so long since anyone spoke to her without judgment, without anger. Her brother's letters loved her, but their fury at David often overshadowed her own grief. Daniel, however, offered something different: understanding. Richard soon entered the room, stopping short when he saw Daniel. His protective instincts flared immediately. Who's this? Anna quickly explained. Richard narrowed his eyes, but Daniel stood and extended his hand. Daniel lay. Old friend of Anna's. I'm also a doctor here. I just wanted to check on her, as a friend. Richard reluctantly shook his hand, but gave Anna a warning look as if to say, be careful. When Daniel left, Anna felt a warmth linger in the room. Memories resurfaced of the boy who used to bring her coffee before exams, the one who once told her she deserved someone who treated her like treasure. Back then, she hadn't understood the weight of those words. Now they echoed in her heart. That night, Anna stared at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. She was beginning to heal, but Daniel's return stirred something she hadn't felt in years: hope. And she had no idea that Daniel's presence would soon become more than comfort. It would place him in the crossfire of the war against David. The public had turned against David and Wyan. The recordings had gone viral, the headlines were merciless, and his once loyal allies were abandoning him, one by one. But even inside his jail cell, David refused to accept defeat. His pride was too big, his hunger for control too deep. He spent hours pacing the cold floor, running his fingers through his hair, replaying the betrayal in his head. William and Richard thought they were clever, leaking his phone calls. Anna thought she was safe behind her brother's wealth. But David was a man who always found a way back. And he still had Emily. That evening, Emily arrived at the jail for visitation. She looked worn down, her once perfect appearance hidden under dark sunglasses and a scarf. The media had shredded her, protesters cursed her name, and she could barely leave her apartment without being heckled. But as she sat across the thick glass, David leaned forward, his eyes burning with intensity. They think they've trapped us, he said, his voice low and sharp. But we can turn this around. If we play it right, we can destroy Anna and her brothers once and for all. Emily's voice trembled. David, I don't know how much more I can take. Everyone hates me. They call me a snake, a liar. Let them, David snapped. That hatred can be useful. You'll play the victim. Say Anna's family is using their money to silence us. Paint her as vindictive, unstable. People love an underdog story. We'll give them one. Emily hesitated, but David pressed on. And there's more. I still have contacts. Not everyone's abandoned me. If I can get word out, I can buy us time. But I need you to follow through, Emily. Without you, this falls apart. Her chest tightened. Deep inside, she knew she was tethered to a sinking ship. But her pride, her shame, and her fear left her with no way out. What do you need me to do? She whispered. David smirked, victory flickering in his eyes. Go on television. Cry. Say you've been harassed by Anna's brothers. Say they threatened you. If you can plant just enough doubt, the court will hesitate. That's all I need, a crack in their case. Days later, Emily appeared on a morning talk show. Her voice shook as she told the cameras, I only wanted to support my friend Anna. But her brothers, men with more money than anyone can imagine, have been threatening me. They're trying to ruin my life. David isn't perfect, but he doesn't deserve this witch hunt. For a moment, the gamble worked. Social media buzzed with divided opinions. Some pitied Emily, wondering if the Tran brothers had gone too far. Others saw through the act, calling her performance Oscar-worthy lies. Inside the hospital, Anna watched the interview, her stomach twisting in disgust. "She's still protecting him," she whispered. William muted the TV, his jaw tight. "Then we'll cut off every move they try to make. They think this is a game. They have no idea who they're up against." But even as he spoke, his phone buzzed with an urgent message from one of their investigators. The message contained a video clip, one that would shift the battle entirely and put Emily in more danger than she ever imagined. William's phone buzzed insistently, the screen flashing with a secure message from their lead investigator. He opened it quickly, his eyes narrowing as the video began to play. Richard leaned over his shoulder, both brothers instantly frozen by what they saw. The footage was grainy, captured by a hidden camera inside a luxury hotel suite, but the images were clear enough to leave no doubt. David and Emily sat together on a plush sofa, wine glasses in hand. Their voices carried through the speakers, unguarded, dripping with contempt. Emily's laugh was sharp. "She actually believed me. After everything, she still thought I was her friend." David smirked, pulling her closer. "Anna was always naive. That's why she was easy to control. But with her brothers around, she's a problem. We need to shut her down before she ruins us completely." Emily swirled her wine, her tone turning cold. "Don't worry, I'll make sure the world sees her as unstable. She'll be the one humiliated, not us." The clip ended there, the image freezing on David's arrogant smile. Richard slammed his fist against the desk. "That's it. That's the nail in their coffin. No one can spin this. It's proof of the affair, proof of the conspiracy, proof that Emily was never her friend." William's jaw tightened. "We release this carefully, not just to the press, straight to the prosecution. This isn't just about public opinion anymore. This is about putting them behind bars where they belong." Inside her hospital room, Anna watched the video with trembling hands. Each word from Emily cut deeper than the last. She had expected betrayal, but hearing it spoken aloud with such cruelty broke something inside her. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I loved her like family." William placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "I know, Anna, but now the whole world will see the truth. She can't hurt you anymore." The video spread like wildfire once it was leaked. News anchors replayed it endlessly, pausing to emphasize David's words, Emily's laugh, the damning arrogance of their conspiracy. Commentators tore apart their lies, social media erupted with outrage, and any sympathy Emily had managed to scrape together evaporated overnight. Crowds outside her apartment grew louder, angrier. Chants of justice for Anna echoed through the streets. Protesters held signs with Emily's face crossed out, calling her a traitor, a manipulator, a monster. For David, the footage sealed his fate. His lawyer, once confident, now looked pale and defeated as he admitted privately, "There's no coming back from this." But for Emily, the fallout was even worse. She couldn't leave her home without being swarmed, couldn't answer her phone without hearing threats. The walls were closing in, and for the first time she realized David couldn't protect her. Late one night, Emily sat in her darkened apartment, clutching her phone. On the screen was a single message from David. "Stay strong. Don't betray me now, or we both go down." Her hands shook violently. She was drowning, hated by the world, abandoned by her family, trapped by David's grip. And deep in her gut, Emily knew she had only two choices left. Either go down with David or betray him before he betrayed her. Emily hadn't slept in days. Her apartment, once a pristine space decorated with luxury furniture, now looked like a cage. Curtains stayed drawn, the floor was littered with crumpled tissues, and unanswered messages piled up on her phone. Outside, reporters camped on the sidewalk, their cameras waiting for any glimpse of her. She sat curled on the sofa, clutching a wine bottle like it was her last lifeline. The video had destroyed her. Overnight, she became the most hated woman in the city. People who once envied her now spat her name like venom. Even strangers shouted in the streets, "Homewrecker, liar, murderer." At first, Emily clung to David's words. "Stay strong. Don't betray me now." But the more she replayed the video of herself laughing with him, the more the shame consumed her. She could hear her own voice, cold and cruel, mocking Anna, the girl who had once shared everything with her. "God, what have I done?" she whispered into the darkness. When her mother finally called, Emily expected comfort. Instead, she was met with bitter disappointment. "You shamed this family. You betrayed the only friend who ever truly cared for you. Don't come home." The line went dead, leaving Emily in sobs. Her guilt twisted into panic. David had promised her love, promised her a future. But now, locked in his cell, he cared only about survival. Every message he sent demanded more loyalty, more lies. Not once did he ask how she was holding up. For the first time, Emily saw the truth clearly. She was disposable. By the third night, her fear outweighed her pride. She stared at the ceiling, whispering to herself, "If I stay with him, I'm finished. If I betray him, maybe I can be saved." The next morning, she made her choice. Emily arrived at the prosecutor's office wearing oversized sunglasses and a trembling resolve. The room was stark, the air heavy with silence as she sat down across from the attorneys. Her hands shook as she slid a flash drive across the table. "There are recordings," she whispered. "Emails, messages, things David told me to hide. If I give them to you, will it help me?" The lead prosecutor leaned forward. "If what you provide proves substantial, we can discuss leniency. But understand, Miss Nguyen, this doesn't erase what you've done. It only shows you're willing to cooperate." Emily swallowed hard and nodded. I can't keep lying anymore. He'll throw me to the wolves if it means saving himself. I need to get out before it's too late." As she left the building, flashes from cameras nearly blinded her. Reporters screamed her name, demanding answers. For the first time, Emily didn't run. She stopped, lifted her head, and said clearly, "David Nguyen is not the man you think he is, and I have the proof." The crowd erupted, microphones shoved closer, questions fired from every direction. Emily's confession hit the evening news like a bomb, shattering whatever fragile defense David had left. But her betrayal came at a price. That night, inside his cell, David was handed another letter. This one slid under the door by a guard with a knowing smirk. The note read, "She talked. You know what happens next." The courthouse was packed. Reporters lined the steps outside, cameras flashing, microphones raised high as protesters shouted for justice. Signs waved above the crowd, "Justice for Anna," and "No mercy for David." Inside, the air was heavy with anticipation. Anna sat in the front row beside her brothers, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She wore a simple dress, her hair pulled back, her face pale but composed. This was not just another hearing. It was the day David Nguyen would finally face the consequences of his crimes. When the guards escorted David in, the room erupted with murmurs. He looked thinner, his once polished appearance replaced by a prison jumpsuit. Yet even shackled, he held his chin high, smirking as if he still believed he could outwit everyone. The judge called for silence, and the trial began. The prosecution wasted no time. They played the damning recordings. David coaching Emily to smear Anna, Emily's laughter as she mocked her friend, and David bragging about using Anna as a baby machine. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Anna kept her eyes on the floor, tears threatening to fall, but William rested a steadying hand on her shoulder. Next came the financial evidence. Bank statements, forged documents, and testimony from experts revealed the full extent of David's fraud. Millions stolen, debts with dangerous criminals, and schemes that stretched across borders. His entire empire, once admired, was nothing more than a house of cards built on lies. Finally, the prosecution called Emily to the stand. She walked in wearing plain clothes, her shoulders slumped, her face pale under the courtroom lights. The crowd hissed at her, but she forced herself forward, her voice trembling as she recounted everything: how David had manipulated her, how she had betrayed Anna, how he had planned every move to cover his crimes. "I thought he loved me," she admitted through tears. "But all he ever loved was control. He used me, just like he used everyone else." David's face turned red, his composure cracking. He slammed his fist against the table, shouting, "Liar! You were nothing without me." The judge banged the gavel, demanding order, but the damage was done. The mask had slipped. In his final desperate move, David's lawyer argued that Anna's brothers were orchestrating the entire case, using their wealth and power to crush him. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury saw through the lies. When the verdict came, the room held its breath, guilty on all charges. The words rang out like thunder. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Anna covered her face, sobbing into William's chest as Richard clenched his fist in triumph. For the first time in years, justice didn't feel like a dream. It was real. The judge delivered the sentence. Decades behind bars, with no chance of parole. David's smirk finally vanished, replaced by a look of pure terror as he was dragged away. But as he disappeared through the doors, Anna felt a chill. She remembered Victor, the dangerous man David owed money to. Prison might protect David from the law, but not from the shadows that hunted him. And soon, those shadows would come for him, whether behind bars or beyond. Prison walls may have caged David Nguyen, but they didn't protect him. Inside the gray corridors, whispers spread like wildfire. Whispers about his debts, about Victor, the man whose name carried fear even in the darkest corners of the underworld. On his third night after sentencing, David sat alone in the mess hall. His tray of food sat untouched, his appetite long gone. Inmates moved around him, some sneering, others watching with quiet interest. He felt their eyes on him, the weight of judgment, not from the law, but from men who lived by their own codes. A guard passed by, dropping a folded note onto his tray without a word. David's hands trembled as he unfolded it. Payment overdue. Time's up. Victor does not forgive. His blood ran cold. He shoved the paper into his pocket, his mind racing. Prison was supposed to buy him time, a shield from Victor's reach. But Victor had no boundaries. He owned men inside these walls. That night, David barely slept. Every creak of the metal bed frame, every shout from a distant cell made his skin crawl. He knew he wasn't just another prisoner. He was a target. Meanwhile, outside those walls, William and Richard were fully aware of the storm brewing. Their investigators had confirmed Victor's involvement. Richard slammed his fist against the conference table. Good. Let Victor have him. Let him see what it feels like to be powerless. But Anna shook her head. Though her body still carried scars, her voice was firm. No. I don't want blood on my conscience. Justice has already been served. I want him forgotten, not destroyed. William sighed, his protective instincts warring with his sister's compassion. Anna, men like David don't just disappear. If Victor wants him, there's nothing we can do. This isn't our battle. Back inside the prison, the shadows grew closer. David tried to call Emily, but her number had been disconnected. She had cut ties completely, leaving him with no allies. The realization gnawed at him. He was utterly alone. During exercise yard time, 2 inmates cornered him. One whispered, "Victor sends his regards." The other grinned, showing a knife fashioned from scrap metal. David's heart pounded as guards shouted, breaking up the confrontation before it turned bloody. But the message was clear. His time was running out. That night, as David lay in bed, he heard footsteps approaching. The cell door creaked open, a guard again. But this time, the guard didn't drop a note. He leaned close, his voice a low hiss. Tomorrow. Shower block. Be ready. David's chest tightened. He knew exactly what that meant. He wouldn't survive another week. He pressed his back against the cold walls, sweat dripping down his face. Fear consumed him, more terrifying than any courtroom, any headline, any betrayal. Victor's reach was absolute, and there was no escape. And while David trembled in the dark, Anna was about to take her first steps into a brighter future, where an unexpected reunion would change everything. Months passed after the trial. The storm of headlines slowly faded, and the world's attention shifted to new scandals. For Anna Tran, however, the scars of her ordeal remained. The pain of losing her child would never disappear, but with time, therapy, and the unwavering support of her brothers, she learned how to carry it without being crushed by it. Her recovery was not just physical, it was spiritual. Each day she journaled, exercised, and prayed quietly for strength. Gradually, the mirror reflected someone new, a woman no longer defined by her pain, but by her survival. William and Richard helped her launch a foundation, the Phoenix Fund. Its mission was to provide shelter, legal support, and counseling for women escaping abusive relationships. At the opening ceremony, Anna stood before a crowd of survivors, reporters, and donors. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as she spoke. "I lost more than I can ever put into words, but I also discovered that even in the darkest night, there is light. No woman should ever feel alone, or powerless, or voiceless. If you are hurting, know this: you are not weak, you are not broken, you are not alone." The audience erupted in applause, many in tears. For the first time, Anna felt something she hadn't in years: pride. After the event, she mingled with supporters, her brothers standing protectively nearby. That was when she saw him. Daniel Lay. He stood a few steps away, his hands in his pockets, a quiet smile on his face. Their eyes met, and suddenly the noise of the crowd faded. Memories rushed back, late nights in the library, his steady encouragement, the warmth of his friendship that had once meant the world to her. Anna approached, her heart pounding. "Daniel," she said softly. He nodded. "I told you I wouldn't stay away. I meant it. I've watched you rise from the ashes, Anna, and I've never been prouder." Her cheeks flushed, tears threatening to spill. "I don't know if I'm ready for anything yet. I'm still healing." Daniel's gaze was gentle. "Then let's just start with friendship. No pressure, no expectations, just two people who found each other again." For the first time, Anna didn't feel afraid of the future. She felt curious, hopeful, maybe even excited. That night, as she sat on her balcony overlooking the city lights, Anna wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and breathed deeply. Behind her, the shadows of her past still lingered, but they no longer controlled her. Ahead of her stretched an uncertain path, but one filled with possibility. She closed her journal with a final entry. "I lost everything once, but today I am beginning again, stronger, wiser, and maybe ready for love." Somewhere far away, in a cold prison cell, David Nguyen lay awake, haunted by footsteps that never came. His empire was gone, his mistress had betrayed him, and Victor's shadow loomed ever closer. His ending was fear. Anna's, however, was something entirely different. A new beginning, and perhaps the start of a love story waiting to be written.